Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to gamblersworld.net. This is the Vegas Vets NFL preview with Jim Feist, Paul Bovi, and myself, the host, Chip Chirimbes. Guys, we had a great NFL weekend, plenty of surprises. There were plenty of upsets and some other things we might have to be concerned with. And, Paulie, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to ask you a question. The fact that there are only two quarterbacks that threw for 300 yards, because you're a totals guy. And how does that affect you coming in the coming weeks?
It really doesn't. Every week is independent of the next, and I think part of that may have been the lack of synergy because a lot of these quarterbacks did not get playing time
Right.
in the preseason. It's gone to a three-game schedule. They didn't have the chemistry with the wideouts. There were several new draftees, so I think they'll get it in gear. And if anything, you'll see softer numbers on the quarterback totals, and you have to evaluate each and every game and
Right.
week independent of the next. So that's the way I'm going to approach it.
Jim, what was the thing that, say, most surprised you or impressed you, or the thing that you took out of week one?
Well, Paul hit on some of it. The collective bargaining agreement a couple of years ago changed everything. They don't practice. A lot of the starters never see any playing time.
Right.
They're very rusty. There's no chemistry. The efficiency between the wide receivers, the offensive line just starts there. I mean, it's not all just standing in front of a guy and blocking him. It's about knowing the schemes. They don't play together. The quarterbacks aren't in there. They didn't get any repetitions. And it's Bill Belichick said a few years ago that with the new rules, that it takes like 4 or 5 games before these teams are really become efficient. Now, that's not going to be the case for every team because some people are going to click faster than others. And some of the garbage out there, it was bad. It was bad. The quarterback play was horrible.
Right.
I mean, just look at the Tennessee Chicago game. How the hell did Chicago win that game? When you look at, come on, it was a high school game in the second half. It was a mess. So we see that, and you have to, I cut my bets down to 25% normal size the first few weeks until I get a feel if these teams actually know what the hell they're doing.
Now, Jim, and Paulie actually too. This new kickoff rule, right? You mentioned guys standing in front of each other to block. Now they're doing that on the kickoffs where they're only 5 yards apart. And how is it affecting the game? Most of the times the ball's going through the back of the end zone anyway.
Well, that's probably the way they should play it, is just kick it out of the end zone. Don't have to worry about it. There was one run back all the way, and there wasn't that many last year. So I think we have to watch it for a little bit, but I think they're going to try to kick the ball into the end zone.
Paulie, do you think they're going to keep this kickoff system that they have now? Do you think they're going to stay with it?
I hope not. By the way, Caleb Williams, 14-29 for 93 yards first game. Yeah, how did Chicago even win that game? But the kickoff, look, I go way back like you do, Chip, and I remember these Giant games, and one of the plays I used to look forward to more than anything else was a guy like Spider Lockhart down at the goal line running back the kickoff. And this, to me, is all very disappointing. They'll probably keep it in the interest of the safety of the game. Yeah. Is it really going to make the game safer? I don't know, but it's only going to account for a marginal increase in field position. So it really is a nothing burger when you stop and evaluate it. So I don't know, and I'll just play it as it comes.
The whole game really changed the moment they went to soccer-style kickers. Because, Paulie, when you and I would go to Yankee Stadium as youths, the Giants from the 40-yard, you like that one, Jim? From the 40-yard line, the Giants used to have trouble kicking the ball to the end zone. And when they had the traditional kickers, and now these guys just boom the ball. And I think that Monday night game, there were 9 kickoffs. There was only 1 return. And I think they either have to move it back to the 30, but I'm really not happy with watching a kicker all by himself, 50 yards, 40 yards away from the rest of the team. It just doesn't seem to jive to me at all. And
hey, Chip, I was going to say, you must be referring to Pete Gogolak. I never saw Pete Gogolak kick the ball in the end zone.
Well, the Giants should have Summerall, who was a tight end, kicking off, and then
Hey,
they went.
we go back to the leather helmets. Come on.
Yeah. Well, Jim, they had no face masks then, and I think you played a lot of football at that time.
I did.
But
That's why I'm not too
all right,
good on camera
let's get to analyzing and some of these games here we see on Sunday. Paulie, I'll start with you because I know you have an interest in New York, having been from there, and the Giants are traveling to Washington. Both teams major disappointments opening week. The Giants didn't even score a touchdown, and that's because their head coach is now the offensive coordinator. He's calling the plays. So who's he going to fire?
Well, I could only tell you that the Giants were an absolute disgrace, which you know, but I do believe that the change of venue will benefit them. Look, they were catcalling Daniel Jones as he was leaving the stadium. It was really bad,
Yeah,
and
really.
he probably deserved it. So having this game being played in D.C. is actually going to benefit the Giants. Now, when you look at Washington and what they did last week against Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield completed 24-30 passes, and it could have been a lot worse because he overthrew McMillan in the first two drives on what easily could have been touchdowns, two touchdowns. And then there was a PI penalty in the end zone against McMillan, which would have went for a touchdown if not for the defender grabbing the receiver. So I just think this Washington secondary is really bad. Now they have a guy back there, say Juice. He had 17 passes defended last year. I think he's their stronger link, but overall the secondary has been horrendous. They were the worst defensive team last year, and certainly they didn't look much better against Tampa Bay. So I do believe the Giants and Daniel Jones will get it together. Slayton is right now questionable. He's dealing with a concussion, but they also have a stud receiver that they drafted in Neighbors. And I think the Giants will manage to score 24 to 27 points here and win the football game.
But they're going to need a big turnaround for that. And Washington, by the way, has lost 9 straight up. They've only covered 2 of those games. Now, Jaden Daniels, rookie quarterback, #1 pick out of LSU, Heisman winner. It wasn't so bad, 17 for 24, 184 yards. But this Washington defense is one of 2 defenses that gave up 300 passing yards. And Mayfield had a field day with it. Jim, you think the Giants have a chance of revitalizing themselves here? I mean, they were really pitiful. 240 total yards on offense last week.
But Chip, on a game by game basis, when you're playing somebody like Washington, yeah, they can turn it around and have a good game. But they're not a good team. They're one of the worst teams in football. And they're going to be, by the end of the year, they're going to be one of the 4 worst teams in football, along with the Panthers and a couple other teams. And you got to remember too, we may have lost Love for a couple of weeks.
Right.
They're talking all kinds of stuff now. He's either going to play or he's not. I don't think he's going to play, but that's coach speak, I suppose. But by the end of the year, you're going to have 4 or 5 teams. They're going to have about 4 victories, maybe. I mean, last week everybody was saying, "Hey, New England's not going to win a game all year." Well, what do? They go out and they win the game as an 8-point dog. So there's a lot of. We have very poor quarterback play. Generally, we have very poor offensive line play. Generally, you got 16 offensive and defensive new coordinators this year in new different spots. Got a lot of changes, and you don't have a lot of practice time. We're not playing 7-8 preseason games. You're playing 3, and you're not playing anybody. So what do you expect? You're going to see a lot of junk. Now, you're not going to have quarterbacks come out and have monster years that the people want them to have. I mean, Danny Dimes, he's way overpaid. He probably is no better than a backup or 3rd-string quarterback, period. He shouldn't even be in the position he's in. We got the same thing, the same garbage with Deshaun Watson up in Cleveland, $240 million guaranteed. We got a lot of bad quarterback play, very marginal offensive line play. There's only a few teams that are really good, and we saw some of them last Thursday and Friday, and then we saw a couple, and we saw, of course, the Rams and Detroit. But a lot of the league is really a little bit better than college ball. That's it.
Yeah. And, Jim, the Giants have had their way with the Redskins. They've gone 7-2-1 in the last 10 meetings, 8-2 against the number. They've won the last three, but these are probably one of the two worst offenses, shall I say, in the NFL right now. I just don't know how the Giants are going to come out of this. I really can't see it. But by the way, so this is going to be one of these games where I don't think there's going to be many people paying attention. I don't know if Daniel Jones can look any worse. I mean, it's the second straight game where he threw a 6-yard interception return for a touchdown. I mean, he seems too mechanical. He just turns and throws, and there's a defensive back standing right there, and he threw it. It was like a gift, just gave it to him. And by the way, for everyone out there, this is our first show. This is I would call it the Vegas Vets NFL preview. And you can give us a like. I mean, all of us are Vegas bound, and we've been there for years.
At least you didn't say Vegas geezers. And thank God for that.
Well, I mentioned that before, Jim. But Paulie pounds the sports books, and you've been a legend, the king of Monday nights for years out there. And so give us a like. Make sure you'll be able to watch us each and every week with the NFL. And I'm going to go to a game that's going to draw some attention. Detroit, of course, is one of the odds-on favorites right now in the NFL to make it to the Super Bowl. They were very fortunate to win over the Rams on Sunday night. And, of course, I was very disappointed in that one. Baker Mayfield, one of two quarterbacks that threw for 300 yards. And people, Jim, and Paulie, he doesn't quite get the respect.
No,
from everyone that I say that he has garnered, because he did lead Tampa to the playoffs last year, and he was 24 of 30, and he averaged 9.6 yards an attempt. So it was a good day for him, a good day for Tampa. Very fortunate to be playing against Washington. Now you have Detroit, who goes over 26-8 at Forest Field. When the total is less than 52.5, and right now it's just under that number. And Detroit is going over the total 13-2 when they've been a favorite at home. It's just, to me, I think there's a high-scoring game. We know the Lions have the high-powered offense. And by the way, the Lions are 11-2 to the over after they've played under, which included 7-0 last year. Paulie, any comment on the Tampa Bay Detroit game?
Well, I agree with you. Tampa looked great. There's some problems in their defensive backfield injury-wise, so that may lend well to your prediction on the total. Detroit, they didn't look in harmony offensively against the Rams at times, and I think they want to run the football. So that may drag this game out. And they had a lot of success running the football. So I think the number is fairly priced. If I were personally playing the game, I would probably take the points. Right now, you can get the 7.5.
Right.
It's laying 7, given 20, 25, or if you want to take the 7.5, you might have to lay a little bit. But I think it's going to possibly get to the low 50s, but I wouldn't be overly enamored with this because of the number and where it's priced.
And for the most part, the player would prefer to play the favorites, but it seems like there's more of the public on the underdog in this game off of the Buccaneers' performance in week one. Getting over a touchdown, of course, would sort of draw more action. Getting back to the over, in the last 4 years, when the total's been 43 or higher, the Bucs have gone 11-1 to the over. Jim, do you see a total or a side in this game at all?
Well, actually, you got a team. First of all, we go back to the players not being totally in sync, and you see a lot of that. Detroit, and Paul said, Detroit wants to run the ball. I mean, they have an efficient passing game, but they're really strong. They got a great probably the number 1 or number 2 offensive lines in the business, which is tough to deal with. I mean, they're pretty damn good. They are a team that a lot of people think they're going to be in the Super Bowl. I happen to be one of them, but I expect every team to have a different look this week. And this is the big week where people overreact to things. And right. It's also historically a very bad week to be playing favorites. Because what you see the ugly. so you want to play against the ugly. You see the good, you want to play on the good. And that's what the average people do. But that doesn't work. Week 2 is a terrible week for playing favorites because of the differences up and down that these teams have. In 4 weeks from now, these teams are not going to look the same. Barring injuries, of course, you're going to have a lot of those as well. I mean, who the hell knows what we're going to get out of Green Bay with the backup quarterback if he plays. So, no, I think this game, I think you hit it. I would like the over, and I would like the dog. Because, I mean, Detroit coming off an overtime victory, that's not easy. I mean, that's a lot of extra football. They got away with one there. The Rams are a good team, so there's no shame in that game. Yeah. But I'm looking for a lot of regression and some improvement from different teams.
Jim, the most important. This should be a big week of improvement for a lot of clubs. They've had a week to adjust. They've seen where their liabilities are and where their strengths are. I can see this game going over the total, and like you said, playing the favorite in week 2 is a harrowing experience for the most part. This is a large number here, and I can see this going over the total. I really can, because of I'd give you a number of different stats and trends which favor the total completely, and the fact that Baker Mayfield now is competitive and he's matured into the position, and this happens so often with so many of these quarterbacks where it's the adjustment from college to the pros is so difficult. The game is so fast that it takes them a while to adjust. Aaron Rodgers sat out his first 2 years, and it didn't hurt him any. That's for sure.
Well, he came out of college, #1 draft choice, wasn't he? He went to Cleveland.
Well, he was at. You mean Mayfield?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure if he was the #1 draft pick. He may well have been. I mean, Cleveland certainly had their misfortunes with drafting quarterbacks. I mean, we had Tim Couch, and we've had whatever else we had there.
Johnny Manziel.
Johnny Manziel, and right now you've got, they signed Deshaun Watson, and boy, I don't know if anyone's looked worse than him. Paul, did you see any quarterback that looked worse than Deshaun Watson week 1?
Well, I'll make a point about Deshaun Watson. I'll also make a point about your Detroit play. I was not impressed with the Detroit secondary. The Rams lost Nakua, and they also lost a few players during the game from their offensive line, and yet they could not stop Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp had 14 receptions, I believe, and he was a shell of himself last year. And he really stepped up in this game, and they couldn't do anything with him. Now, as far as Deshaun Watson, I'm not going to put it on him completely, because his offensive line was decimated. They had 2 tackles out. I had Cleveland over 8.5 wins, and I played it a couple months ago. An hour before the game, when those tackles were declared out, I played the whole thing back on the under 8.5 wins, and boy, I'm glad I did, because I look brilliant right now. Sometimes you sit with something and you hope it's going to work out. I don't do that. Once my position is undermined by an injury or I don't like it anymore, I hit the exit. So Deshaun Watson last week was hit 17 times by the Dallas Cowboys. He was also sacked 6 times. And that was on 51 dropbacks. So on half of the dropbacks, he was either sacked or hit. So I'm not going to put it all on Deshaun Watson, but I'm going to put it in large part on the injuries to the offensive line, which, if they're healthy, they rival pretty much any offensive line in the NFL. But unfortunately, without their health, the quarterback is a sitting duck.
At one time or another during the game, they had 3 different offensive linemen than they started with last year, and it certainly showed. That's for sure. Jim, what do you think? What do you got cooking this weekend in the NFL? Anything special for us?
Well, I gotta. I have a lot. I mean, I have a lot of picks up already, and a couple more I'm going to be adding
at gamblersworld.net.
At gamblersworld.net, absolutely. And there's the injury reports are coming out today, tomorrow. We're going to see more who's playing, who's practicing.
Right.
So we're going to know a lot more. So, like I said, I cut my normal bet down to about 25% of its normal size for the first few weeks, unless, of course, I get lucky and start really killing.
So you're down to like $250 grand a game. Is that it?
I don't know what world you live in, but maybe if I was betting horses in Hong Kong, maybe I
Oh
could
no,
do something like
he's
that.
strong. He's strong for sure.
Paulie
Paulie,
would know
what are
something.
you working
Paulie
on?
would know something about betting big in Hong Kong. I have a feeling he knows about that.
Paulie, anything
Well,
big out there
yeah.
for you this weekend?
I look. I really haven't settled on anything in the NFL. Not much, anyway. I did
Well,
stick my toe in the water, but I'm going to have a lot more. Let's put it this
for
way:
the most
as
part, how many
I'm,
games would you post on a Sunday, Paulie?
well, I've already played a few props. I'll throw one out here right now, okay? Just because I played it already, and I played Joe Mixon over. I believe it was 60.5. It was either 60.5 or 66.5, and that's a Sunday night game. So if you want to get involved there, but I made about 8 plays so far, and a lot of them are going to be props. As far as size totals, I'll probably have around 4.
Okay.
Okay, and I did play the Giants and the Giants team total over. But by the way, on the Mixon play, he ran the ball 30 times for 159 yards on Sunday. So he's going to be a workhorse. That's a
Right.
workhorse. That's another team that actually, as formidable as a group of wide receivers as they have, they want to run the football. A lot of teams want to run the football
Right.
because it opens up their passing game.
Isn't it amazing, Paul, that a couple of years ago, and I don't know, maybe it's been last year, everybody was saying, oh, running backs, you don't have to pay them. They're not worth anything. But now, look at last week, because it's reverting. If you think about it, and we're all businessmen in different ways, how do you pay somebody all the money? The biggest percentage of your salary goes to the quarterback.
Yeah.
He gets one hit. Offensive lineman isn't doing his job. He goes out. And now you're to a backup. I mean, last year you had 66 quarterbacks start games in the NFL. My God, there's only 32 teams. So maybe they wise up and realize you do need a running back to run the ball, to block, and do other things and help the quarterback out. It can't all be on the quarterback because, first of all, they're not all that good. Some are good. Some are great. I mean, there's some great ones out there. Don't get me wrong. But you have to depend on your offensive line to give them some time, because if they want to throw the ball deep, you're going to need somebody to block these guys, and they're not easy.
All right. Before
Yeah,
we
and
close, I like to remind
you
everyone to
also,
give us a like. Paulie, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you also destroyed the salary cap. I mean, you mentioned Daniel Jones before, second, third string. I don't know about third string, but I will say they gave him $80 million on the strength of that Viking playoff game. They could have franchise tagged him. Now they're kind of stuck with him. And they're going to have to somehow maneuver this if they want to opt and go in a different direction. But they're in trouble. So you make a great point, and they have to somehow balance this a little bit better.
I don't know how. I was listening to the Cleveland announcer, somebody that follows the team, and they tried to restructure the contract with Watson, and I guess they did. They opened up a little more money to pay other people, and they probably would love to get rid of him because he hasn't done anything really positive there. But in the next 2 years, they have to pay him $98 million.
Amazing. All right. Before we close, I was wondering if you guys had, the face of gambling really has changed with these props. I mean, there's so many props out there for every game. Jim, do you focus in on any of that in the individual props?
I know Paul does, and Chip, you and I are in the same age bracket. When we were starting, you couldn't find props.
There was no such thing.
The best you could do is maybe find a halftime line.
Right.
And we go back to when they didn't even have totals on the games. So I mean, this is all new now. When you open up and you start reading what people are betting over this and over that and under that, and it's the same thing in baseball. So this is a whole different way of approaching how to win and I guess lose in betting sports. But no, I'm not as proficient at it as I would like to be. But I didn't grow up with it either.
Right.
No, I did bet Josh Allen. I mean, tonight's game, right? Anytime TD. I did make a play on that. I have been doing well with that type of proposition bet. And of course, totals. I've always been pretty good at totals.
Right.
Now, I do want to bring up, and we talked because you asked me what game I wanted to talk about, the Aaron Rodgers thing. Aaron Rodgers, 40, 41 years old, Achilles. That's a bad injury. It takes time to recover from it. And sometimes as you get older, you don't recover. I can speak to that very well. And he doesn't move around that much, and I don't know if the offensive line can protect him well enough. Now, granted, he's not going to play San Francisco 49ers every week, which
Right.
has an excellent team, excellent coaches, excellent players. I mean, he's going to grow up against softer teams each week. Travel West Coast, get pretty well banged up last week, and they lost badly. Now they have to go to Tennessee, which has to be shaking their head. How the hell did we lose that game? And the question there is their quarterback really a quarterback? Is he really a starting quarterback? We know he can play in the league because he's a big guy, talented kid, big arm. But now you have that, and then I'm going to give you a play, but it's not for this week.
Okay.
Next Thursday, the Jets have to play their third game in 10 days. Not a good thing.
Right.
I'm betting against them next Thursday. Now, granted, injuries can happen. That can get me off that. But that's something I've been looking at.
Paul, do you have any props up at gamblersworld.net right now?
Oh, I didn't know I was allowed to post props, but as I said, I played the mixed-in prop. I've already played 4 of them, and I'll have more because props. Look, I'm going to tell you, I've been playing props a long, long time, ever since they came out, and I go back to the Imperial Palace when they put them out on all the Super Bowls, and I was one of the first guys to line up because props offer softer numbers. A lot of times the calculations are really based on the averages, and the averages don't factor in the strength of the defense versus that particular type of prop. For example, if you have a team that's weak against the run and you have a strong running team, well, if they're just taking the average, you're going to get the best of it. So I do think props are softer because they got to put more of them up, and you as a gambler, you want to look for the soft spots. If you're just going to look at hard lines, just point spreads, it's a lot harder to find value. And the name of the game in gambling is value. That's how to make money.
Yeah. Jim, a final word?
Well, Paul's one of the best EV players, positive expectation players out there. And one of the things about props, and I don't play nearly as many as you do, Paul, but there's limitations on how much you can bet. Bookmakers are little bit. I mean, you want to go out and bet a $25,000 bet on the side, it's pretty easy to do. You can probably do half that or a little bit more than half on the total. But when it comes to props, I mean, some places are only taking $500, $1,000. And you're I'm not going to talk numbers, but you're a big player. I know you. And so you must shop a lot of different places to get the kind of money down that you want on these things.
Right. To answer your question, okay. The mix-in prop I played yesterday at -110, and it's on auto move. So once it hits the number or hits the max, they'll automatically move it up. Some accounts are on auto move, some aren't. So I then played it at -114, and eventually I'll be priced out. And if you don't have a number of outs, which depending on the state I'm located in at the time, I usually don't. So I have to take what I can get and be happy with that. And you're right, Jim. A lot of these props I simply cannot get off on to the extent or nearly the extent that I would like to. But that's just the world we live in.
What that creates in your portfolio, I'm going to throw some examples out. If you're a $10,000 side bettor and a $5,000 or $6,000 total bettor, and then you can only bet $2,000 on props, your portfolio is a little out of whack. So you're not really being able to balance your action like I personally would like to do. But like you said, if you can make money on it, 2,000, bet 500, 4,000. I mean, it's still good money, but it's not a balanced portfolio because of the limitations.
Listen, Jim, I'll pick up nickels anytime. Okay, because nickels add up.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'd
I'm
like to
sorry.
thank you guys. I'd like to thank you guys for being here with us, and for everyone out there, push the like button and become part of gamblersworld.net, where you get all our premier plays. For Paul Bovi, Jim Feist, I'm Chip Chirimbes. We'll see you again next week.